There is belief, and then there is skepticism. And between those two lies a vast territory of questions and the unknown. But what if reality is far more complex than we've been willing to perceive? And what if the stories that we dismissed as myth and legend hold the keys to understanding consciousness? From ghostly encounters to mysterious lights in the sky, humanity has always sensed there was something more out there. Some call it the paranormal, and others call it the divine. Some search the stars for answers, while others look within. They are all connected, threads in the grand tapestry of life. But we stand at a place where the fabric between realities is much thinner than you might think, because this is Crossroads of the Veil.
My name is Mark McCandlish, and for the better part of the last 30 years, I've been a conceptual artist, illustrator, and designer, working predominantly for the aerospace and defense industries. About 1988, I came into some information that indicated that the United States government was in possession of and operating a kind of anti-gravity technology through a system, an aircraft that was referred to as the Fluxliner or as the Alien Reproduction Vehicle.
It begins as the most profound secrets often do, not with a bang, but with a whisper. A story told from one friend to another. A story that, if it were true, would change everything we thought we knew about our world, our technology, and our place in the universe. But a story is just a collection of words, fragile and easily dismissed. To survive, to become something more, a story needs an anchor, it needs proof. In this case, the proof was a drawing. On its surface, it is a piece of technical art, a meticulously rendered, cutaway schematic of a disc-shaped aircraft. It is filled with precise leader lines, technical callouts, and the unmistakable, sterile aesthetic of a genuine engineering blueprint. It has the look and feel of something that belongs filed away in a locked cabinet in the vaults of a major defense contractor. But this is no ordinary aircraft. This is a blueprint for a machine that should not exist, a vehicle that operates on principles of physics that supposedly belong to the realm of science fiction. It is a drawing of a flying saucer, and its creator was not a dreamer or a novelist, but a trusted insider of the American military-industrial complex. A man paid to visualize the nation's most classified secrets. This document, the tangible, undeniable artifact at the heart of this story, is known as the blueprint for the Alien Reproduction Vehicle, or ARV. It is the physical anchor for a story that otherwise exists only in the shadows. A story of a ghost-like witness, a secret demonstration in a closing Air Force base, and a technology so revolutionary it would shatter our world. The narrative that surrounds this blueprint is a labyrinth of high-stakes espionage, suppressed science, and ultimately, tragedy. To understand the story of the ARV is to confront a mystery that can be viewed through one of the three distinct lenses. Each lens offers a different explanation, a different reality. The first and simplest is that of the modern legend. This view suggests the entire story is a perfectly constructed hoax, a compelling piece of fiction that owes its longevity to its narrative perfection and the skill of its creator. It's a modern campfire story, told with such detail and conviction that it has taken on a life of its own, passed around in the hushed, flickering light of computer screens. It's a tale so well told that it simply feels true, tapping into our collective desire to believe that something incredible is being hidden from us. The second lens is that of the disinformation gambit. This is a more cynical and complex view. Here, the story is not a random fabrication, but a sophisticated piece of psychological warfare, a narrative deliberately planted by intelligence agencies. Think of it as a magician's trick. While you're focused on the unbelievable story of a flying saucer, the magician's other hand is hiding a different, perhaps more conventional, but still highly classified, aerospace project. Its purpose could be to poison the well of ufology, discrediting the entire field by associating it with a story that can be quietly dismantled over time, leaving anyone who believed it looking foolish. It's a weaponized story, designed to confuse and mislead. The third lens, however, is the one that seems to accommodate the sheer weight of the evidence, the credibility of the source, the coherence of the technology, and the brutal finality of the consequences. This is the suppressed truth. It posits that the story is exactly what it purports to be, a genuine leak of a world-changing reverse-engineered technology that has been ruthlessly guarded for decades. It is a secret that threatens to upend the entire global economic and power structure. A secret that would make the fortunes of oil barons and the power of governments worthless overnight. It is a secret worth killing for. We will proceed by exploring the evidence. It is a journey that follows the trail of a technical witness who lost everything for speaking out, a blueprint too detailed to be a fantasy, a physics that is already hiding in plain sight, and a conspicuous silence from the official record. We will walk a path that leads into the darkest corners of the national security state, where the future is being hidden from the present, and where the price of telling the truth can be your career, your peace of mind, and ultimately your life. To comprehend a secret of this magnitude, one must first understand the man who gave it form, Mark McCandlish. He was not a wild-eyed speculator or a disconnected outsider. By every professional metric, he was a quiet, meticulous, and highly respected conceptual artist, whose life's work was dedicated to rendering the tangible and often classified realities of the American defense establishment. His job, in the most literal sense, was to draw the future. Imagine a man who lives his life in the space between what is and what will be. A man who sits in sterile, windowless rooms, listening to engineers speak in a language of thrust-to-weight ratios and radar cross-sections. His task is to take their equations and their theories and transform them into an image. A vision so compelling that generals and politicians will sign checks for billions of dollars to make it real. That was Mark McCandlish. He was an accomplished aerospace illustrator, a man trusted by the giants of the industry, Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas, General Dynamics, to give visual form to their most advanced and clandestine creations. He was the artist who translated the complex language of engineers and defense planners into compelling, understandable visuals of next-generation fighter jets, bombers, and strategic military hardware. His hands gave shape to secrets, creating the very images used for internal presentations, technical manuals, and strategic planning sessions. He knew what a real top-secret aircraft looked, felt, and was supposed to be presented as, because he had helped create their official images. He understood the visual language of power and secrecy because he was one of its most fluent speakers. This unique profession made him the perfect whistleblower. His talent was not merely art. It was the visualization of classified reality, a skill set honed and validated by the very system he would later expose. The inherent credibility of his work was not his own assertion. It was a matter of professional record, underwritten by the most powerful aerospace corporations in the world. This is the foundation of his story. The very skills the defense industry paid him to use to guard their secrets became the most potent weapon in his arsenal of disclosure. If Lockheed trusted him to draw their secrets accurately, the blueprint he created on his own time carried an inherited authority that was difficult to dismiss. His status as a trusted insider was cemented in the mid-1980s, during the twilight of the Cold War. The world of military technology was a shadowy theater of secrets and whispers. Projects were born and died in total darkness, known only by cryptic code names. It was in this environment that McCandlish was reportedly approached by the legendary Lockheed Corporation, specifically their highly secretive Advanced Development Projects Unit, better known to the world as the Skunk Works. The project he was courted for has since become a legend in its own right, the Aurora. The Aurora was a ghost, a myth whispered about in aviation circles as the successor to the iconic SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest air-breathing jet ever built. It was said to be a hypersonic reconnaissance aircraft, capable of flying at the very edge of space at speeds exceeding Mach 5. It was the stuff of legends, but for the men inside the secret world, it was a tangible program. To be invited into the orbit of a project like Aurora was to be given a key to a very exclusive club. It meant you were trusted. It meant you could keep a secret. By placing himself within the orbit of such a highly classified and legendary program, He was a man who had been behind the curtain, familiar with the world of black projects and the nested layers of secrecy that defined advanced aerospace development. This proximity to the world of official secrets serves a crucial narrative function. It builds a ladder of plausibility for the audience to climb. The SR-71 Blackbird is a known, formerly top-secret aircraft that is now in museums. It is the first rung on the ladder. The Aurora represents the next step up that ladder, a widely rumored but officially non-existent aircraft occupying the space of the plausibly deniable. By establishing McCandlish's connection to the Aurora, the narrative prepares the audience for the final step into the deepest part of the shadow world, the Alien Reproduction Vehicle. That makes the final leap feel not like a jump into pure fantasy, but like one more step into a darkness whose existence has already been established. This background provides a profound and complex weight to his subsequent claims. He was not just a storyteller, he was a technical witness. When he later sat down to create the blueprint for the ARV, he was not engaging in an act of imagination. He was engaging in an act of documentation, applying the exact same professional skill set he used for Lockheed to a secret he had acquired through other more perilous means. He was an insider who began to speak of things that were supposedly even further inside, beyond the clearances he was granted, in a realm of secrets nested within secrets. He understood the culture of these programs. He knew about the intense compartmentalization, where engineers on one part of a project would have no idea what those in the next room were doing. He understood the psychology of secrecy, the way it binds people together in a shared purpose while isolating them from the rest of the world. He had breathed the sterile, filtered air of the secret world, which is why, when his colleague stumbled upon something he was never meant to see, Mark McCandlish knew exactly what he was looking at. He didn't just hear a fantastic story. He recognized the details, the context, and the chilling implications of a secret far bigger than Aurora, a secret that could rewrite the laws of physics and the future of humanity.
Deanne Davis with United Press International. Could you please address the vehicle that there was a drawing displayed of? Why would this vehicle be on display at an air show? What is the power source that you are asserting is going to be so very useful? And how can you determine that this vehicle is not something that is being developed, by a government agency?
In fact, I think that was the testimony. This is an alien reproduction vehicle, and just to be clear, this means that it is based on advanced anti-gravity and zero-point energy propulsion systems. They are being manufactured by a consortium of companies that include Lockheed Martin, Northrop, SAIC, and other corporations.
It happened on November 12, 1988. This date does not appear in any official history books, but for those who follow the shadow history of technology, it marks a pivotal moment, a fleeting crack in the wall of secrecy that surrounds the world's most profound discoveries. The place was Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino, California, a sprawling logistics and transport hub for the U.S. Air Force. On any given day, the sky above Norton was filled with the roar of massive C-141 Starlifters and C-5 Galaxies, the workhorses of the American military. But Norton was a base in transition. Earlier that same year, it had been officially marked for closure by the Base Realignment and Closure Commission, or BRAC. This seemingly mundane administrative detail is, in fact, the critical plot device that makes the entire story plausible. Secrets are most at risk, not in heavily guarded fortresses, but in places undergoing logistical chaos. A closing base implies a whirlwind of personnel being reassigned, security standards becoming lax, equipment being moved, and general confusion, the perfect environment for a breach. The event that allegedly took place there was likely not a random air show, but a final private demonstration for high-level political figures or defense investors before the entire program was moved to a more secure, deep black location, far from public view and prying eyes. It was a moment of transition, and in that moment, the curtain was accidentally pulled back. It was during this rare moment of vulnerability that a single man took a wrong turn and walked into history. His name was Brad Sorensen, an aerospace designer and a professional colleague of Mark McCandlish. He was at Norton for a simple reason: to network with contacts and hopefully find new work at the annual air show. With the base closing, contracts were drying up, and a man like Sorensen, who lived and breathed aircraft design, needed to stay connected. He was a professional, just like McCandlish, a man who understood the difference between a real piece of hardware and a fantasy. The narrative of what happened next, as he later related in meticulous detail to McCandlish, unfolds like a scene from a political thriller. While at the show, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of jets and crowds, Sorensen became separated from his group, looking for a restroom or a way back to the main exhibition area. He saw something that piqued his professional curiosity. A group of well-dressed people, clearly VIPs, being led into a large secured hangar, set apart from the main public displays. The hangar had no markings. The men leading the group wore dark suits, not uniforms. The people in the group had the look of senators or CEOs. Assuming this was a special tour he was meant to be on, a high-level briefing he had missed the invitation for, he simply fell in line and followed the group inside. In a critical and fateful lapse of security, he was not challenged by the guards at the door. They were focused on the front of the line, on the important faces. Sorensen, with his professional demeanor, simply blended in. He had stumbled into the inner sanctum. Inside the hangar, the atmosphere changed instantly. The noise of the air show faded away, replaced by a cavernous silence. The air was cool and still. The lighting was low, theatrical. It was an atmosphere of profound secrecy and importance. Sorensen found himself in the midst of a private tour being given to a select group of high-level dignitaries. A presentation was underway. Given by a man in a crisp uniform Sorensen identified as a 3-star general. Realizing he was in a place he should not be, Sorensen's heart began to pound. His instinct was to turn and leave, but it was too late. The doors were closed. To leave now would be to draw attention to himself. He did the only thing he could do. He tried to remain inconspicuous, lingering at the back of the crowd. He listened as the general spoke of a revolutionary new technology, a breakthrough in aerospace engineering so profound it would change the world. The general spoke of a new age, of rendering all current forms of transportation obsolete. He spoke of national security, not in terms of borders, but in terms of planets. Sorensen, an aerospace designer, was captivated even as fear gnawed at him. Then, at a dramatic signal from the general, a massive curtain at the side of the hangar was pulled back. The reveal was stunning. There, hovering completely silently and motionlessly several feet above the hangar floor, were 3 saucer-shaped craft of varying sizes. There were no visible means of propulsion, no rotors, no jets, no downward blast of air that one would expect from any conventional technology. They simply hung in the air, a silent testament to a physics that had been rewritten. They didn't even hum. The silence was the most shocking part. They defied gravity as if it were a law that no longer applied to them. Sorensen, an aerospace designer himself, was astounded. He noted that they looked like something out of a 1950s science fiction movie. A classic flying saucer brought to life, yet the finish on their hulls was seamless, perfect, beyond any manufacturing technique he had ever seen. The general continued his presentation, a proud, knowing smile on his face as he watched the reactions of the VIPs. He showed them a film of one of the vehicles in flight. The film depicted the craft performing incredible aerial maneuvers, making instantaneous right-angle turns and breathtaking accelerations that would have crushed any human pilot and torn any conventional aircraft to pieces. It moved like a thought, not a machine. The general stated that the craft, which he nicknamed the Fluxliner, but which were officially designated the Alien Reproduction Vehicle, or ARV, were powered by a zero-point energy reactor and were capable of incredible speeds, even light speed or better. He explained, in no uncertain terms, that they were the result of a successful reverse engineering program of recovered, non-human, alien technology. He had said it. The word that changed everything, alien. After the presentation, as the shocked VIPs were led forward to get a closer look, Sorensen, stunned by what he had seen, saw his chance. He slipped out of the hangar, his mind a whirlwind of impossible images and world-altering words. He later recounted the entire experience in meticulous detail to his friend and colleague, Mark McCandlish. This single testimony is the bedrock of the entire claim, but it is a testimony with a ghost at its center. When investigators and journalists in the years that followed tried to find Brad Sorensen, they hit a wall. Independent public record searches for an aerospace designer matching his specific profile and connection to McCandlish have been complicated and inconclusive. While a designer named Brad Sorensen with a public profile does exist, with no verifiable public connection to McCandlish or the specific events described, skeptics point to this ambiguity as a fatal flaw in the story. If the witness doesn't exist, they argue, the story is a fabrication. But this view fails to consider the nature of the secret being protected. The narrative of the conspiracy performs a rhetorical judo flip, turning this absence of evidence into evidence of conspiracy. The ambiguity of Brad Sorensen's identity is not a weakness in the story. It is the first piece of evidence of the cover-up in action. He is a ghost in the system because he was deliberately erased. What kind of power does it take to scrub a man's entire professional history? To make him a ghost? This is not the work of a simple military public relations department. This is the signature of an intelligence operation of the highest level. The inability to find the right Brad Sorensen is not proof that he didn't exist. It is presented as proof that he was real, and that he saw something he was never meant to see. Brad Sorensen had the story, a fleeting, unbelievable memory of silent, hovering machines. His mind was a chaotic archive of what he had seen and heard in that secret hangar. But a memory is a fragile thing, prone to fading and distortion. It needed to be captured, documented, and translated into a language that could be understood by others. Mark McCandlish had the skill to give that ghost a body. He had the ability to take a story told in hushed, fearful tones and turn it into a schematic, a language of engineering and physics that could be studied, shared, and most importantly, believed. Over a period of months working in secret, McCandlish painstakingly translated every detail Sorensen remembered into a technical illustration. This was not a quick sketch, it was a forensic process. Imagine the scene late nights, fueled by coffee and a creeping sense of paranoia. Sorensen closing his eyes, trying to recall the exact placement of a component, the shape of the hull, the details from the general's presentation. McCandlish, with his draftsman's precision, asking questions, making notes, and then, with steady hands, drawing the lines that would give form to this impossible memory. Every line, every label was a small act of defiance. The result is more than a drawing. It is the tangible, physical product of Sorensen's testimony, a highly detailed, cutaway illustration that has become the canonical document of the entire affair. It is the central, tangible piece of evidence, the smoking gun. This blueprint is not a vague, artistic sketch of a flying saucer. It is a professional, technical schematic, rendered in the precise style of a genuine engineering blueprint one would expect to find in the archives of Lockheed or Northrop. It is filled with technical labels, leader lines pointing to specific components, and an aesthetic of professional authenticity that speaks directly to McCandlish's background. It looks real. It feels authoritative. It transforms an unverifiable memory into a concrete set of technical specifications that can be analyzed. This act of creation was an act of reverse espionage. McCandlish used the very skills the defense industry paid him to employ for their secrets to expose a secret from them. The military-industrial complex trains artists like McCandlish to create precise, compelling visuals of their most advanced hardware. His creation of the blueprint was therefore not just artistic, it was a strategic leak using the enemy's own language. It was a direct challenge, a document that says, I know your methods, I know your language. Here is your machine, rendered in your own style. Now deny it. A guided tour of the blueprint reveals the anatomy of a revolution. The design shows a craft with three primary concentric components. At the very center is a small spherical compartment for the crew. Surrounding this is a large toroidal, or donut-shaped ring that contains the immense power and propulsion systems. The whole assembly is then enclosed within a smooth, classic, saucer-shaped outer hull. The blueprint also depicts an unusual spherical control ball located at the top of the central crew compartment, said to be part of a unique navigation and control interface that likely worked in tandem with the pilot's own consciousness. The propulsion system is where the technology takes a quantum leap. The schematic describes a system using a mercury-based plasma, spinning at incredibly high speeds in a vortex within that toroidal ring. This spinning plasma is driven by massive amounts of energy stored in a ring of high-voltage capacitors. According to the narrative derived from Sorensen's testimony, this process generates a powerful and unique electromagnetic field that is capable of manipulating space-time itself, effectively creating a warp in gravity that the craft falls into, allowing for silent, instantaneous movement in any direction. There is no action and reaction, no pushing against the air or expelling mass. It simply creates its own gravity well and moves. Based on Sorensen's account of seeing 3 different sized craft in the hangar, McCandlish claimed the RV was developed by Lockheed Skunk Works in 3 distinct operational sizes. In a touch of narrative flair that speaks to the internal culture of these black projects, he claimed they were given the code names Baby Bear, Mama Bear, and Papa Bear. The Baby Bear was described as a 24-foot diameter craft. The Mama Bear was 60 feet in diameter, and the Papa Bear was a massive command-sized craft of approximately 130 feet in diameter. This level of specific detail adds another layer of authenticity and richness to the story. To truly grasp the magnitude of the secret McCandlish revealed, one must compare the alleged capabilities of the Fluxliner to the absolute pinnacle of publicly known aerospace technology. Consider the F-22 Raptor, the most advanced air superiority fighter in the world, a symbol of American technological dominance. An F-22 takeoff is a violent, visceral event. Its 2 Pratt & Whitney turbofan engines unleash a deafening roar that shakes the ground, burning thousands of pounds of JP-8 jet fuel to generate a spectacular display of raw power. It is the peak of conventional brute force propulsion. Now contrast that with the ARV. Its propulsion system is a reactionless electrogravitic drive, a spinning vortex of mercury plasma. It requires no fuel in the conventional sense, produces no exhaust, and according to the witness, makes no sound. Its power source is not a tank of combustible fuel, but a zero-point energy reactor, drawing limitless power from the vacuum of space itself. The F-22's top speed is approximately Mach 2.25, and it leaves a sonic boom in its wake. The RV is said to be capable of light speed or better, a velocity that makes atmospheric flight a mere stepping stone to interstellar travel. In terms of maneuverability, an F-22 pilot can endure crushing G-forces, but the aircraft itself is still bound by the laws of aerodynamics and material stress. The ARV, by warping space around it, can perform instantaneous right-angle turns at speeds that would disintegrate any conventional machine and turn any pilot into a red stain. This stark contrast powerfully establishes the motive for the extreme cover-up detailed in the chapters to come. A craft with these capabilities would not only render every other military aircraft on Earth obsolete, but it would also end the global economy's dependence on fossil fuels, solve the climate crisis, and open the solar system to humanity. This is the true scale of the secret, and it provides the terrifyingly simple motive for the silence. A technology this powerful is a threat to the entire global power structure. It is a secret worth killing for. How does a machine hang silently in the air, defying the most fundamental force we know? How does it draw limitless power from what appears to be empty space? The answer, according to the story of the ARV, is not magic. It is physics. A new physics, one that has been developed in secret, far from the public eye and the peer-reviewed journals of academia. It is a physics that taps into the very energy of space itself and masters the fabric of the cosmos. To build the case for this suppressed science, the narrative systematically co-opts legitimate, if controversial, areas of theoretical physics, reframing their mainstream limitations as evidence of a deliberate cover-up. The journey to understand this new physics begins not in the 1980s, but in a high school lab in the 1920s. A young experimenter named Thomas Townsend Brown noticed something strange while working with an X-ray tube. When he charged it with high voltage, it seemed to push, to generate a tiny, unseen force. He believed he had stumbled upon a link between electricity and gravity, a phenomenon he would later call electrogravitics. He spent his life developing this idea, building devices called asymmetric capacitors, essentially two differently sized electrical plates separated by an insulator. When charged with a powerful electric field, these devices produced a thrust toward the larger, positive plate. Brown envisioned a future of silent, wingless craft propelled by this unseen force. The mainstream scientific establishment, of course, has an official explanation for this. They call it ion wind or electrohydrodynamics. They claim the effect is nothing more than ionized air particle being pushed between the electrodes, creating a small amount of thrust, and they point to experiments conducted in a vacuum where the effect supposedly disappears or is greatly diminished. Within the conspiratorial framework, this explanation is seen as a deliberate, simplistic misdirection, a classic debunking tactic designed to shut down inquiry. Proponents of true electrogravitics argue that these public tests were fundamentally flawed. They were conducted at low power levels, insufficient to produce the real space-time warping effect. They were, in essence, designed to fail. The proof that electrogravitics is real, the story goes, is not in a public lab. It is hiding in plain sight in the skies above us. The prime example is the B-2 stealth bomber. It is a cornerstone of electrogravitics lore that the B-2 utilizes a high-voltage charge on the leading edge of its massive wings and injects charged particles into its exhaust stream. The purpose is to create an electrogravitic field that reduces drag and increases lift, making the flying wing far more efficient than conventional aerodynamics would allow. The B-2 is presented as the bridge technology, the first public application of a principle that has been perfected in secret in the ARV. The second key to the Fluxliner is its incredible power source, a reactor that can tap the limitless reserves of zero-point energy. To build credibility for this extraordinary claim, it must first be grounded in legitimate physics. Zero-point energy is a real, undisputed concept in quantum mechanics. It is a direct consequence of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which states that we can never know both the position and the momentum of a particle with perfect accuracy. Because of this, even at a temperature of absolute zero, when all thermal energy is gone, particles must retain some minimal residual motion. This residual energy, inherent in the very fabric of the quantum vacuum, is the zero-point energy. Its existence has been experimentally verified through phenomena like the Casimir effect, where two uncharged plates in a vacuum are pushed together by the pressure of quantum fluctuations. The energy is real. It is everywhere. And the amount of it is staggering, with calculations suggesting the energy density of the vacuum exceeds all energy in matter by a factor of 10 to the power of 40. The official scientific rebuttal to harnessing this energy is once again a dogmatic appeal to old rules. Mainstream physics argues that tapping zero-point energy would violate the laws of thermodynamics. Energy, they say, can only be used when it flows from a high state to a low state. And since zero-point energy is the ground state, there is no lower state for it to flow to. This is framed as the argument of an old paradigm, a set of rules the secret keepers have already broken. It is like telling the Wright brothers that humans cannot fly because the law of gravity forbids it. The alleged existence of the Fluxliner is presented as proof that a method has been found to create the necessary differential, to tap into this infinite ocean of energy. If the idea of bending space-time for propulsion seems like pure fantasy, one need only consider the work of Mexican theoretical physicist Miguel Alcubierre. In 1994, inspired by the television show Star Trek, he published a paper in the prestigious journal Classical and Quantum Gravity. He proposed a mathematically consistent solution to Einstein's own field equations that would allow for faster-than-light travel without violating local relativity. His concept, now known as the Alcubierre drive, involves creating a warp bubble that contracts space-time in front of a vessel and expands it behind. The ship itself would rest in a flat, calm pocket of space, carried along on this space-time wave, much like a surfer on an ocean wave. While Alcubierre's theory faces its own immense hurdles, most notably the need for vast quantities of exotic matter with negative energy density, its very existence is a profound validation. It proves that the concept of manipulating the fabric of space-time is not pseudoscience. It is a serious subject of study at the highest levels of theoretical physics. Fluxliner is not presented as a magical fantasy, but as the alleged practical application of a principle that mainstream science is only just beginning to grapple with theoretically. Alcubierre showed the world the mathematical path. The secret programs, armed with recovered alien technology, had supposedly already arrived at the destination. The suppression of this technology is therefore not merely about maintaining a military advantage. It is ideological. A technology that can provide limitless clean energy would end the entire global economic system, which is based on the production, sale, and control of finite resources like oil and gas. It would eliminate poverty and scarcity overnight. Furthermore, the concept of a universal energy field, an ocean of energy from which all things emerge, is a central tenet of countless ancient spiritual and esoteric traditions. The successful harnessing of zero-point energy would represent a profound validation of these ancient worldviews, fusing modern physics with what has long been considered mysticism. This is presented as the true reason for the cover-up. The scientific establishment that debunks these concepts is not merely being objective. It is acting as a gatekeeper, wittingly or unwittingly, to protect a fragile economic and philosophical order from a truth it cannot comprehend and a future it cannot control.
He says this drawing is about as accurate as you can get. He says every detail, every aspect of it is right on the money. He said it is so accurate in every way. He says this has to be probably one of the most dangerous illustrations you've ever done in your life. And he says, and if you're smart, he says you'll tear up the original, you'll throw it away, and you'll never talk about it again.
When you shine a light into the abyss shines back. Mark McCandlish had crossed the line. He had taken a secret from the darkest corner of the national security state and drawn it out into the light, creating a document that could not be easily dismissed. The system, according to the narrative, did not take kindly to this. The price of truth, for Mark, would be everything. After he created his famous illustration of the Alien Reproduction Vehicle and began to speak about what he had learned from Brad Sorensen, he claimed that he encountered big trouble. The consequences were swift and systematic. His once thriving career as a trusted illustrator for the defense industry was effectively over. Doors at Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas, and other aerospace giants that were once wide open were now firmly shut. The phone calls stopped. The contracts dried up. He was blacklisted. This story of profound personal and professional sacrifice is a crucial element of the narrative, framing McCandlish as a classic martyr for a cause. He was not just a messenger, he was a victim of the very conspiracy he was trying to expose. Alongside the professional exile, he claimed he was being followed and that his phone was being tapped. Classic intimidation tactics used to isolate and silence dissent. He would notice the same nondescript sedan in his rearview mirror for days at a time. He would hear strange clicks and echoes during phone conversations. His life, once a comfortable existence on the inside of a powerful system, became a paranoid existence on the outside, looking in. His high-profile appearance as a key witness for Dr. Stephen Greer's disclosure project, held at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in May 2001, was the moment he went fully public and sealed his fate. Standing before the assembled press with cameras flashing, he presented his testimony and his ARV illustration to a global audience. From that point on, there was no turning back. He transitioned from a behind-the-scenes artist to a public advocate. The systematic destruction of his career is presented as the most compelling evidence that his claims were true. The ferocity and totality of the response is argued to be directly proportional to the importance of the secret he revealed. An insignificant hoax would be ignored. A baseless rumor would be allowed to fade away. But a dangerous truth must be crushed. The narrative poses a simple, powerful question. Why would the most powerful defense corporations in the world coordinate to blacklist a single talented illustrator? Why would they sacrifice his valuable and difficult-to-replace skills? The only answer that fits within this framework is that the images he was creating on his own time were more real and more dangerous than the ones they were paying him to create. This is not a mere narrative trope. It is presented as a documented, systematic neutralization protocol. The lack of a thriving career, the absence of new contracts, is not evidence against his credibility. It is powerful evidence for the conspiracy. The silence from his former employers is not a dismissal. It is the sound of a gag order. His professional ruin is the receipt for his truth-telling, a punishment that paradoxically becomes a form of validation for the importance of the secret itself. He had traded his livelihood for a truth he felt the world needed to know, and the powers that be made sure he paid the price in full. For years, the keepers of the secret were apparently content to simply discredit him, to ruin him professionally and financially, to isolate him. They hoped the story would remain confined to the niche circles of ufology. But then, the story started to spread. The secret was escaping its containment field. In 2013, a documentary film titled 0 Point, the story of Mark McCandlish and the Fluxliner, directed by James Allen, brought the blueprint and the entire narrative to a massive new audience. The film, which originated as Allen's MFA thesis project at the Savannah College of Art and Design, masterfully wove together McCandlish's personal story of sacrifice with the intricate technical details of the craft, using high-quality animations to bring the blueprint to life. Its wide availability on free streaming platforms like YouTube and Vimeo amplified its reach enormously. It codified the story for a new generation. It was no longer just a story told at conferences. It was a film that could be shared with a single click. In Zeus, it appears that the keepers of the secret decided that a new, more permanent solution was required. Secrets of this magnitude are not kept with non-disclosure agreements. They are kept with fear. And in the end, the story would be written in tragedy. The pattern of events that followed the film's release suggests a terrifying escalation in the cover-up. When professional and financial ruin failed to contain the story, the protocol appears to have shifted to the physical elimination of not just the source, but the key amplifier. First, the documentary's director, James Allen, a young and reportedly healthy filmmaker, died of a rare and aggressive form of cancer shortly after the film's release in 2013. For those within the conspiracy narrative, this was not a random tragedy. It was a message. Was it a coincidence that a man who had just created the most effective vehicle for this dangerous story was struck down by a disease that is famously difficult to trace to a specific cause? Or was it a more sophisticated, more insidious form of silencing?
I mean, there's many times I lay awake at night with my 9mm under my pillow, loaded, and I wonder why they haven't killed me. You know, I honestly do.
Then on April 13, 2021, Mark McCandlish himself was found dead. The official cause of death was ruled a suicide. This official ruling is widely and vehemently rejected by many within the UFO community and by those who knew him. They suggest, with compelling logic, that he was silenced by the same shadowy forces he had spent his life trying to expose. They point out that he had plans for the future, that he was engaged in new projects, and that he was not a man prone to despair. Would a man who had weathered 30 years of blacklisting and harassment, a man who had finally seen his story reaching a global audience, simply decide to end it all? Or was his death a final brutal act of censorship?
And if I woke up tomorrow on the other side of the veil, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. I really wouldn't. Because I know how serious the technology is. I know that it's real.
The timeline is presented as chillingly clear. McCandlish is professionally suppressed for years, and the story remains niche. A documentary is made, giving the story a global reach. Suddenly, both the director and the subject are dead within a few years of each other. This is not a coincidence. It is a pattern. It is a clear and brutal message. It is not just the messenger who is a target, but anyone who dares to amplify the message. The story itself has become toxic, a danger to anyone who touches it. This transforms the narrative from a technological mystery into a murder mystery, raising the stakes to their absolute peak. This final tragic chapter has cemented McCandlish's status as a martyr and, in the eyes of his followers, serves as the ultimate, grim confirmation of the truth and danger of his claims. The silence they couldn't achieve through professional ruin, they finally achieved through death. The tragic and suspicious circumstances surrounding Mark McCandlish and James Allen are not isolated incidents within the narrative of suppressed technology. When viewed in a broader context, their stories join a chilling pattern of untimely deaths, professional ruin, and systematic obstruction, targeting brilliant minds who ventured into the realms of zero-point energy. free energy, and related advanced physics. This pattern, stretching back decades, suggests a coordinated, ruthless, and ongoing effort to keep these world-changing technologies from the public. Here are a few of the harrowing stories of others who became successful in applied zero-point energy or related free energy technologies, facing severe repercussions, including death.
The storyline basically is that there's a lot of work going on in the aerospace industry that would indicate that we have black projects that have gone even darker, and that there's work being done on electrogravitic, on scalar technology, etc., that we don't even think that those in Congress or even in the military that approve black budgets are aware of.
The casualties of the secret war, often found in the margins of mainstream science and news, reveals a disturbing number of pioneers in the field who have met violent or inexplicable ends, often on the cusp of major breakthroughs or public announcements. 1997, Professor Stefan Marinov, a respected Bulgarian physicist and a vocal leader in the European free energy movement, Marinov was a fierce critic of established physics, claiming to have built and demonstrated several over-unity devices that appeared to violate the law of conservation of energy. In 1997, after years of reporting harassment and threats, he died after a fall from a university library building in Graz, Austria. While officially ruled a suicide, his colleagues and supporters have long maintained that the circumstances were highly suspicious and inconsistent with his character, insisting he was a victim of foul play intended to silence his work. 2004, Dr. Eugene Milov, an MIT-trained scientist, editor of Infinite Energy magazine, and one of the world's leading experts and proponents of cold fusion, low-energy nuclear reactions, Dr. Milov was a tireless advocate for this controversial field. He argued passionately that cold fusion was a legitimate phenomenon with the potential to solve the world's energy crisis. In May 2004, just as he was securing significant funding and preparing for a major announcement that he believed would prove the viability of his research, he was found brutally beaten to death in Norwich, Connecticut. The case was initially botched by local police, who suggested it was a random robbery. It took years for the truth to emerge. It was a calculated murder. While a conviction was eventually secured, many in the field believed the true motive was to stop his work, and that the convicted individuals were merely instruments in a much larger conspiracy. 2007, Andrea Rossi, an Italian inventor and creator of the energy catalyzer, a patented device claimed to be a practical cold fusion apparatus linked to the zero-point field. Rossi has been a central and controversial figure. In 2007, he was reportedly found near death in his car from what was described as a poisoning attempt. This event occurred during a critical phase of his research and business negotiations. Rossi has since been embroiled in numerous legal and scientific battles, with powerful entities seemingly attempting to either steal his technology or discredit it entirely. 2009, Mark Toman, a brilliant physicist and inventor, Toman developed a propulsion system he called the Star Drive. According to those familiar with his work, the system was remarkably similar in its theoretical principles to the ARV's alleged use of zero-point energy for propulsion. In 2009, just 2 weeks after a reportedly successful prototype trial of his device, Toman died suddenly and unexpectedly. The official cause of death was an aneurysm, but the timing, coming so closely on the heels of a major breakthrough, has led many to suspect it was an induced or assisted event, a method of assassination that is difficult to prove. These are just 4 additional cases in a very long line of stories that have one thing in common: zero-point energy. The suppression tactics they use range from character assassination and discrediting, financial and legal obstruction, harassment and intimidation, and when all of those have failed or been exhausted, they resort to physical elimination. These accounts strongly suggest that the story of Mark McCandlish is not an anomaly, but a single well-documented case study within a much larger undeclared war. It is a war for the future, being fought in the shadows against those who would give humanity access to limitless clean energy and the stars. The consistency of the tactics and the sheer number of victims point toward a deeply entrenched, transnational power structure whose existence depends on maintaining the technological and economic status quo. The price of truth, it seems, is not just a career, it is often life itself. Where does this leave us? With a ghost of a witness, a blueprint of an impossible machine, and a trail of tragedy. The official record is silent. A systematic search of government and military archives yields no mention of Fluxliner or Alien Reproduction Vehicle. The science is dismissed by the establishment as a violation of known laws. The men who knew the truth are gone. One can call it a hoax, an elaborate myth. But that is the easy path. It is the path of the modern legend, successful only because of its perfect narrative construction. Or one could suggest it is a sophisticated disinformation story planted to hide something else. But a hoax would not be so technically coherent or provoke such a vicious, career-ending response. Disinformation would not require the silencing of its own creators after their message had been successfully amplified. Only the third path, the suppressed truth, seems to fit all the facts as presented. The insider with impeccable credentials who lost everything for speaking out. The blueprint too detailed and professionally rendered to be a mere fantasy. The physics that, far from being impossible, is already hiding in plain sight in advanced military aircraft like the B-2 bomber, and is being explored in the open by respected physicists like Miguel Alcubierre. And finally, the convenient deaths of the story's messenger and its most effective amplifier. Perhaps the greatest tragedy here is not the death of one man, but the motive behind the silence. We imagine secrets are kept for grand strategic reasons, to protect a nation, to prevent panic. But history whispers a more unsettling truth. Often the most profound breakthroughs are hidden not to protect the public, but to protect the powerful. A technology that offers limitless energy threatens to upend the entire economic order. A technology that opens the stars challenges the very foundations of national borders and terrestrial conflicts. A truth that rewrites our place in the cosmos is a truth that dissolves the old structures of control. The impulse to conceal such a thing is not born of wisdom, but of fear. The fear of losing a grip on a world that is already slipping away. It is a pattern as old as humanity itself. The few clinging to a familiar and profitable present, sacrificing the magnificent future of the many. The Fluxliner may be hidden in a deep black hangar somewhere, but its shadow looms over everything. It is a testament to the enduring gravity of a single well-crafted image and a compelling story. It demonstrates how these elements can combine to exert a powerful and lasting pull on the human imagination. A pull that remains potent long after the verifiable facts have been scrubbed and the primary messengers have been silenced. This story is now in your hands. Mark McCandlish carried this truth for over 30 years. He gave his career, and ultimately his life, to bring it into the light. Now the responsibility has been passed on. The real question is not, do you believe? The question is, what are you going to do about it? The search for truth demands that we question the official narrative, that we demand transparency, and that we keep stories like this alive, because somewhere locked away behind a wall of secrecy is the truth and a technology that could change the world. The key to unlocking it begins with a single dangerous act, the act of asking a question.
My name is Mark McCandlish, and for the better part of the last 30 years, I've been a conceptual artist, illustrator, and designer, working predominantly for the aerospace and defense industries. About 1988, I came into some information that indicated that the United States government was in possession of and operating a kind of anti-gravity technology.
As we step back from the crossroads, remember, the story doesn't end here, because this is just the beginning. Searching for the knowledge and wisdom to unravel the mysteries of our universe. Unexplained sightings, spirits, and science. They are all connected in the grand tapestry of life. So remember, keep pulling at the threads, because this has been Crossroads of the Veil.